and we came back to London to record the Orchestra of the London Symphony, and the membership of the orchestra, I think there were about 12 members of the orchestra in it now that were in the original band. But they sound the same. It's like the Boston Symphony or any great symphony orchestra. That you turn around after 30 years and the personnel is all different, but there's a continuity and an organic continuum there.
So you felt going back to use them and record them was essential to get that sound?
Yes, and going back to them, they seem, even though they're largely different personnel, they seem the same. And I think it was important to George also, in the superstitious sense perhaps, or just in the sense of keeping the same team in place, so that once you got back on the horse or back on the bicycle, you were there for an hour and suddenly we were back with it again. You know, it wasn't alien. It presented wonderful challenges of in the sense of trying to make it the same and make it different and make it fresh. One thing that I'd like to point out in Anakin's theme, I really sort of wrote that backwards in the same way that George wrote his script. It's really Darth Vader's theme taken apart and reconstructed. If you listen to it very carefully, you can hear the intervals of the structure of the Imperial March of Darth Vader, which is an evil Imperial power piece transformed into a very sweet and lyrical, youthful kind of tune. And that's just sort of a poetic conceit or a trick, but it was a fun trick. And I noticed the members of the orchestra, particularly the younger ones, when we first played it, they all say, "Ah, I get it, I hear the clue, I know what that means." When we write music for films, we don't have the audience's full attention orally with the ear. They're going to hear a lot of sound effects and hear dialogue, and they maybe will hear the music once or twice if they see the film twice. So generally speaking, particularly in films like this, the music has to be, you might say simple. It has to be straightforward. You have to pretty much say what you want, what you mean, pretty clearly. If that means to be simple and to be direct and have the motivic representations of character be simple things, the things you can hear through all the dialogue and through all the distraction, that may be a good thing. And before we introduce any kind of complexity, if it's simple and if it's memorable and you hear it in the second reel and then you hear it in the fourth reel, you remember in the fourth reel that you've heard it in the second. And you need to have that memory to connect the link or connect the vertebrate part to the earlier part of the film. There's a wonderful sense then of the audience, which they're not consciously aware of an inevitability of something that they might even have predicted themselves, and that's part of the dramatic mechanism of pulling the audience in. The only thing we've added this time, some electronics, synthesized keyboard sounds, materials that actually weren't technically available in 1977. I haven't used a lot of that, but there's some electronic work. Also, there's more choral work in this piece than we've had in the earlier three. I don't recall just now whether we used chorus at all in the first three films. But with quite a few, half dozen sequences or more of important sequences in Phantom that do involve either women or children or mixed choir. This choral piece that has to do with the sword fight and comes at the end of the film is a result of my thinking that something ritualistic or pagan and antique might be very effective, and that the introduction of a chorus at a certain point in the film might be just the thing. And taking that simple thought a little bit further, I thought, well, I need some kind of a text in order to do this. We could do it. We have Isaiah's vision of the angels, which doesn't have a text, and that could be done also. It could still be very effective. But I thought if I could find something. So in one of my favorite books to read is Robert Graves' White Goddess, which is basically a history of poetry, but it's got a lot to do with Celtic folklore. And I've written some other music for concert pieces out of this book, more recently a piece called The Five Sacred Trees. And in reading about the Five Sacred Trees, I remembered the great Celtic epic poem, The Battle of the Trees, in which the two fields of trees are animated by a druidic priest, and they become warriors. They do the battle, and on command from the druid, the trees again freeze and become trees. And there's a stanza in the poem translated by Graves from the early Celtic into modern English, which is roughly under the tongue root, a fight most dread, while another rages behind in the head. And for no conscious, sensible reasons, the idea of a fight, something raging and imagined in the head more than anywhere else, seemed to be a good mystical, cryptic piece of business. And so with the help of some friends at Harvard, I first asked them to translate it to Celtic, and then into Greek, and then finally into Sanskrit, just looking for basically good choral sounds, good vowels. It's the reason we like to sing in Italian, because it doesn't have consonant word endings like our English, which is so hard to sing. And Celtic didn't work at all because for just that reason, it didn't have a good vocal sound. Greek, I thought, even Greek of modern antiquity, is too well known, but Sanskrit is less well known, and it had beautiful sounds, a gorgeous language. So basically, what I've done in this case is reduced the stanza, which was translated literally, and used either single words or syllables or combinations of these things, the words dreaded fight or this kind of thing, and put them together repeatedly and so melismatically, which is to say, the repeating syllables. Everybody knows what that is from the Hallelujah chorus, where you sing the word Hallelujah for 20 minutes, you know. And it gave an atmosphere, I think, to the music that was at once mysterious and old and dramatic and, I hope, effective. I just felt the way that George has staged that at the top of that great stage or stairway, I don't even know what to call it, the way it's done, and is so dramatic and so like a great pagan altar, if you can imagine, that the whole thing seemed like a dance, a ballet, a religious ceremony of some kind, probably ending in the death of one of the combatants, you know? A ballet about that. Super real, or unreal even. And that the medium of chorus and orchestra would give us a sense that we're in a big temple. The drama is the contrast and the contest between good and evil and all the difficulties we have in sorting all that out and our conceptions of where these things come from.